Hello, welcome to Purple Coach Conversations with Tanya and Anne. So our goal is to normalize, educate, and inspire conversations around inclusivity and diversity. We're both coaches, mothers, entrepreneurs. We're not diversity experts, but we do aim to have conversations with people that have something interesting and unique to say about their journey and experiences around inclusion and diversity. So today we're very excited to have Rosemarie Wilson, and I'll give Rosemarie a chance to introduce herself in a bit more detail. But before then, Rosemarie is a certified mind coach, international speaker, author, and mentor. She helps career-focused women bridge the gap between ambition and fulfillment. She also works with organizations that are committed to nurturing and retraining talent. So she's got a book that she's just completed, and her first book is called Imposter Syndrome and Your Performance, What's the Link? And hopefully we'll be seeing it next year or towards the end of this year. But Rosemarie, thank you so much for joining us today, and would love to have you introduce yourself in a bit more detail.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Anne and Tanya, for having me here today. So a little bit about me. Just thank you for the introduction that you've already shared. So just my background stems from finance, in fact, and I spent many years working in oil and gas, which is a completely different space from what I do now. But throughout that all, I always had a hankering for helping other people. So from my childhood to now, where I am. And I decided that I wanted to work for myself, and I retrained 7 years ago, and I retrained to become a coach using the skills that I have, the wisdom I've amassed over the years to help other people, and that surmised to working with women, career-focused women who somehow can't find that gap between ambition and fulfillment. So they're really career-focused, but something's missing. So that's why I decided to do what I do. And also within organizations, because I had that background in organizations, I thought it's important to help people within companies to see what else they can do whilst they're in the organization, to be more confident and step up to go for promotions, go for roles, etc. And either stay in the company or move on if they need to really define who they are and help to support that in terms of their goals. Well, that's just a little bit about me. So Pragmatica Coaching is my company because I'm very practical, very pragmatic, and very wise.
Love that. We can feel that when we talk to you and we hear you explain your journey. And there's something that, we had a little chat before we started, and it's true that you were saying something very important, that on paper, and I'd love for you to tell us about what you just said to us before, that on paper, people will see you as a successful individual, but you've gone through a tough and difficult journey to get to where you are.
Yeah, which has made me even more remarkable and successful because of that journey. So I just want to preempt that, a precursor that with, don't ever compare yourself to other people, because you never know what's going on behind the scenes. And I am a classic example of that. So I always say, look at people, admire them, say, yes, I want to achieve success, but I'm going to do it my way. So that's quite important. So, which leads me into my own story. So when I first met you, I very openly shared, I think pretty much at the beginning of the conversation, that I said I'm a product of domestic violence, in that my father used to beat my mum, and he ruled our home with fear. And myself and my brother's 2 years older than me, we witnessed that from an early age, from childhood, we were both babies. I mean, I don't remember years 1 to 3, but I remember after that, when my memories come alive. So, my father used to beat my mum to the point where we were fearful. We didn't know what to do. There were instances where we would have to leave the home to see if there was someone that could help us because of what was going on behind closed doors. But my dad was a very charming man, and nobody ever believed that this is what he was doing behind the scenes. He was very intelligent. I guess he was frustrated with some of his own stuff that he never achieved, and that he took it out on his family, in particular on my mum. So behind the scenes, this was going on, and I grew up being very angry because I didn't know what to do with these feelings. I had to hide them. I had to hide not being able to protect my mum, not being able to protect myself, not being able to protect my brother. My dad didn't beat myself and my brother, but it was a form of control, bullying in the home, that we were really, really fearful of him. And I know this can go on in other households, but this is my experience. It got to the point where my mum literally fled the home when I was about 9, my brother was about 11. I fled the home in the middle of the night, arranged for removal vans to come and take some of the furniture away. So she had support from her sister, and literally fled the country. We went to Jamaica to get away from him because of his brutality and the way he behaved. So fast forward, because this is quite a long story. So fast forward to, we didn't like Jamaica. We didn't at the time appreciate the richness of the country, of the culture, because we were English kids, snotty-nosed English kids, and we didn't understand. It was quite poor. We didn't have electricity. There was no running water. We went back to a completely different life. And my mum didn't know what to expect, and that was not what she expected either. So we came back to the UK, and sort of fast forward, I guess we were both, myself and my brother, we were both tarnished by what had happened as children. And my mum was obviously greatly affected by it, because she had to leave her job to leave this man. So there were lots of things going on behind the scenes. And I grew up in my teen years, you've got your hormones raging, you've got this stuff going on in your head, and you don't know what to do with it. But deep within me, somehow, I don't know how, there was a sign. I knew that there was something better than this. I just couldn't reach it at that time. I didn't have the mental capacity to reach it and control my behaviors, my anger. So I was an awful teenager. I played up to my mum. We actually came back to the UK, but we didn't go back to my dad. But I knew that I had to study, I had to work hard. Somehow I had to be successful. I don't know what was going on, but there was this kind of dichotomy of anger and success all in the same body. So fast forward, I studied, I started studying finance, and that's what I wanted to do for some reason. And I moved throughout the pipeline of the corporate world to where I am now. So that's the rest of the story, but I'm giving it to you in bite-sized chunks. But throughout that, I would get myself into trouble. I would go out. I would be very protective of my friends and people that were around me. So I would, if someone said something to a friend of mine, I'd just kind of square up to them and really be quite bold, almost aggressive. But I knew that wasn't the right way. But again, this guardian angel, I have to call it, kept me balanced in terms of not really getting myself into too much trouble, let's say. But there was an anger beside me, and I had I hated my dad. I just hated him. I couldn't bear him. And my mum would force me to go and see him, which would just drive me nuts. Anyway, fast forward, I knew that I was carrying this hatred, this anger within me about what he'd done, and how he treated my mum. But it got so bad, I realized that it was affecting me and that I needed to do something differently. So age 27, I distinctly remember it. I just bought my first flat, and I was in my living room. I had no furniture, I had a bean bag and some little stuff. And I literally sat down on the beanbag and said, I have to forgive him. I actually have to forgive him. And I guess behind the scenes, it was working up to this time, but I had to forgive him. And that in that moment, I forgave him. I didn't go up to him and forgive him. I forgave him in my head. And things just started turning around for me from there. I'd already started being less angry, because you can't be angry in the corporate world. I wasn't visibly angry. It was more behind the scenes. Sorry, this is a really long story, but yeah,
No, please take all the time you need. This is very important.
Yeah, I forgave him in my head. I didn't see him much. But I forgave him in my head. And I just felt a sense of peace, that I could carry on with my career, but just with more calm, with less fraughtness, less anger, less trying to prove myself, this kind of strange behavior that I'd adopted, that I couldn't quite put a name to it. But yeah, from there, I started, just things started turning around for me. I just felt this sense of calm and more peaceful behavior. But behind the scenes as well, so my brother was also greatly affected by what happened to us as teenagers. And I think this is an important part of this conversation as well. My brother, black male, suffered from this, unfortunately, and he's actually diagnosed schizophrenic from the age of 19. So this is part of the story that I didn't share earlier, but he's still unwell. He's lost his life to this illness, and I believe it was impacted by what we saw growing up and the way that my father treated myself and him, more so that my father treated my brother, because it was his only son. There was this kind of level of, you need to be this, you need to do that. And when my brother didn't live up to that, my father would berate him. So that kind of bullying behavior came out as well. And I think my brother was greatly impacted by that as well. Obviously, when you're a teenager, you are going through the hormonal changes. And I believe that, and what I understand about schizophrenia is that the psychosis can happen. It can be quite prevalent in teenagers, because there's other hormones going on, hormonal factors. So 17 to 19 for boys, or for teenage boys. And my brother was greatly impacted by that. So his life, as we know it, is cut short because he doesn't admit that he's unwell. So we've had to do lots of different things behind the scenes to keep him fairly well managed and in the community. So another part of the story. So you see me now and you see, oh wow, Rosemarie's amazing. She's bouncy. She's successful and she's happy. And I've chosen to be happy. I've chosen to be forward thinking and to look for positives and to help other people because of what happened in my childhood, in my background. So I've said I've seen enough hurt in my life to not want anybody else to go through it, and to do what I can to make life just a little bit easier for other people. So now I see my path is clear. The reason I do what I'm doing is because of all these tiny little stories that make up who I am today, and what's going on behind the scenes. So you see me, and I'm successful, and I love what I do, and I've had a great career, but it hasn't been without challenges, is the most of the story. So that's a little bit about me and my background.
We see you and we love what we see, Rosemarie.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing in such honesty. And I think a lot of people listening out there as well are also going to appreciate that honesty and openness. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, those are many, many years of going through trauma and living through this. And you talked about how at 27 years old, you decided to find a way to forgive him. And when I was listening to you, I could see how you actually processed the emotions throughout your life with the anger who was a fuel to do things. It was a fuel to kind of move forward. But the fact that you've been able to be angry, and the fact that you've shown that anger and expressed it, I think in a way that when you see examples of people who really struggle to get over anything traumatic, is very often because they bury everything inside, and then they get triggered at any person stepping onto that buried traumatic experience. But it's very inspiring to see that and also, you know, I spoke with someone who went through a very difficult experience like that, and she said, I don't think I'm able to forgive, but I've done something else than forgiving, and it's just helped me now to find peace. And this is something that I'd love to hear more about, you know, how you've managed to find a way to forgive him. How was that process? When you said you were 27 years old, and was there any external triggers that helped you make that decision, or made you think about the challenge in a different way?
I've gone through this so many times in my life about how this happened. How did I arrive at that spot where I said, right, this is it, I've got to do something differently. And I've tried to analyze it, and I've tried to, put it to pieces. And I guess I think, as with everything in life, there are a series of things that happen consciously or subconsciously. And obviously I knew that anger was destructive. And I ultimately didn't want to self-destruct. I just didn't want to do that. And I could see that the anger was playing externally. If you looked at me, you wouldn't see that the anger was prominent, but the way I process things internally, it was prominent for me. So for instance, I'll give you another. I got into a fight when I was about 18, 19. So there's so many stories here. I got into a fight when I was about 18, 19. I'd gone to a club, and a guy had approached me. He was coming on to me, trying to chat me up, and he was like, "You will go home with me." And he was quite aggressive and bullying. And I was like, well, this is not right. That, this is not on. And but I knew that I had the strength to walk away from this person, to get myself out. I felt quite threatened. So I was with two girlfriends, and we left this club. And he didn't like that. He didn't like that I was walking away from him, because I dissed him or whatever. So I left the club, and long story short, he came. We were trying to get a taxi, and he came into the taxi station, and he squared up to me in my face, really full on. And I just wasn't having it. I full on squared up to him and was like, come on, let's go, kind of thing, like, let's have a fight. And I'm like, this is crazy, right? I'm an 18, 19-year-old girl. I was working as well. I was working and studying. So I knew that's not normal behavior. So anyway, we ended up having a fight, and long story short, we both ended up in the hospital that evening. And literally, he was in the same cubicle as me, with curtains separating us. And I remember realizing he was there, and going behind the curtain and looking at him and saying, what the hell, why did you do that? Why would you attack someone like that? And I remember just being so angry at him. But these are the sorts of things that were going on behind. That was probably the worst scenario that had happened. But when you have all these instances of anger showing up, you recognize that you either live like that and becomes who you are, or you do something about it. So that's one story, but there were many others similar, not so dangerous, but similar to that were with me. So I was at work, I would be, had this nice professional face on, but when I went out in the evening or at the weekend, if something happened, I would be protecting people, or really, really putting myself in danger by standing up for myself and for other people. So, you have these patterns of things happening. And then at some point, I guess behind the scenes, I recognized that this was because of what had happened as a child. So I must do something about it. So I think, to answer your question, I bought my flat, and leaving the family home, leaving my mum, my brother was living with my mum because he was unwell. Leaving them, it was like a new beginning to me. So maybe that is the answer I've been looking for. I don't know. So I sat in my flat, so happy that I was like, woo, got my own flat, got my own, I'm independent now. I've got no furniture, but I'm happy. And then in that one of those moments, because I had no furniture for a little while, in one of those moments, I just recognize I've got to let this go. You are now in a new stage. Move on, let it go, see what else you can have. But yeah, there wasn't anything external. I've always been into self-help books. I've always been into my Alice Walker, J. California Cooper, stories of hope. I've always been into books that were telling stories of challenges, but that ultimately there was something happy at the end. So I've always been into those types of books. Anyway, so I guess somehow they must have influenced me, and I saw the light, let's say. So I think that answers your question.
It's such a fascinating background, Rosemary, that you've come from. And I think it's really interesting to get that view of you as well. And talking about having been so angry that you actually get into a fight with a man, not just even a woman. That is a serious amount of anger to have within you. And then talk about forgiveness and how you do it as well for yourself. And if you don't do it for yourself, and the consequences of living with such anger, is just so detrimental. And you've shared about your brother as well, and the effects of what domestic violence does. And I'm so sorry to hear that. It's I think we don't think past what the long-term effects as well. People think that now that you've come out of the situation, it's fine, but there's so many other knock-on effects that come about from domestic violence. So important to talk about it. I also want you to tell us about, I know you do a lot of work on diversity and inclusion, and you run workshops around that. And when we spoke last time, you talked about emotional intelligence as well.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your take on that and how you link the two.
Yeah, well, I'm a classic example of emotional intelligence and what it can do, and how it can heal, how it can help. So for any talk I do on diversity and inclusion, let's say that, so whether it's a workshop, a panel event, or a talk that I'm giving about my background or what I do, I think it's important to get to the human, to get to the person. There's the kind of personal element. So I think a lot of the struggles that we have now and we'll see going forward is because we become disconnected with ourselves. We don't know what that means. And emotional intelligence means you become more connected with yourself, and that allows you to connect better with others. And that is essentially what diversity and inclusion is all about. It's about recognizing our differences, being respectful of them, and including people into your space and your life, because of them, not despite them, but because of them. They enrich us. So for me, the 5 elements of emotional intelligence are self-awareness. So you first become aware of your behaviors, how they impact yourself and how they impact others. Self-regulation. So it's not to say that you numb what you're feeling, but you become aware of it and you regulate it to be able to interact with others. So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, that's essential. So you regulate how you behave with other people. You are aware how you behave with other people. And we have this thing that we always want to be right. We always want to be correct. It's my way, not your way. This divisiveness that causes so many issues and problems. And yeah, you can't save the world in an hour or half an hour. So that part, that's the self-management area, self-awareness, self-regulation. And then we come on to your motivation, empathy, and social skills. So obviously those 3 are about how you interact with other people. So once you start learning about yourself and how you are, if you are, I don't know, unconsciously biased or about other people around you, once you become aware of doing that and you regulate that behavior, then you're able to better have good relationships with other people. So you can become more inclusive. So that is essentially the highlight of that, is what I talk about when I talk about emotional intelligence, is making it more personal, taking responsibility, taking ownership for yourself and your actions and your thoughts, and then seeing how you can better interact with other people. So you also experience less anger, less less divisiveness, less control over wanting everything to go your way, and just being a bit more open. Now, this sounds like a fairy tale world, and I would love for all of us to be much more emotionally intelligent, to be more tolerant, to be more accepting, and that's what diversity and inclusion is. So when I go into the workshops and I use emotional intelligence as a background, some people have never heard of emotional intelligence, some people haven't heard of it in the way I describe it, but I try to make it more personal rather than just theory. So using personal stories and using personal examples, real life examples, so that people can then connect the dots and say, when I treat someone a certain way, this is what I'm doing. I'm actually excluding them because I'm thinking that they don't belong in my gang, as it were, because I'm, I think I'm so special, or they're too different from me. So I think it's important. Emotional intelligence in the workplace, in your personal life as well, I think is a really important element, especially for being inclusive and creating a sense of belonging.
This workshop sounds like one I would love to attend. And I think that, like you said, for diversity and inclusion, but also for any sort of leadership, emotional intelligence is key. I'm sure you're very familiar with Daniel Goleman. I don't know if I pronounce his name properly, but I do love his work and how he talks about it as well. I think they're the best leaders, he says, are the most emotionally intelligent ones. And I was curious to know also if the demand for this workshop picked up over the last year or so, and who usually demands for you to do those workshops.
So I've actually delivered them in both from a personal point of view. I wish I could clone myself. From a personal point of view, I've delivered the workshops over the last 18 months in different spaces. But I've also delivered them as part of a D&I inclusion space for organizations as well. So I've had a few tech companies as well. I've done it for a legal company, a legal firm, and a couple of other women's groups as well.
Yeah.
So
I would love you to share the details so that we could maybe include it in our notes, so that if you have a workshop coming, or if you're doing a webinar or something around that, we would love to send it to our audience as well, and to ourselves, to make sure that we will get to the next one, because I think it would be a great addition to our learning journey as well. Not just necessarily the individual stories, but going deeper in understanding how we can become more emotionally aware. And I'm wondering, because your title of the book is Imposter Syndrome, where would you place it in the 5 elements? Where would that be? Would it be in the self-awareness, or?
Yeah, I would put that in the self-management category. So self-awareness and self-regulation. So, I mean, the imposter syndrome is something, the reason I do imposter syndrome, which funnily enough seems to be my most popular topic, because a lot of, men struggle with imposter syndrome as well, but women more so tend to speak about it. We just deal with it differently. Men and women just deal with it differently. So interestingly, imposter syndrome seems to be my most popular topic. So, which is also why I wrote a book about it. But self-awareness definitely, and self-regulation on imposter syndrome. That's a great tie to if you want to put it in the emotional intelligence category.
And do you see any difference when it comes to imposter syndrome, whether you come from a background, a minority background, with more discrimination, etc., versus other people with non-discrimination background, etc.? Do you find any difference in treating this?
Good question. So marginalized groups, so women in male-dominated industries or environments, and other, so Black, Asian, disabled, different marginalized groups will also potentially struggle more with imposter syndrome. how it manifests itself is that marginalized groups of Black people are less likely to talk about it, or less likely to have outlets to discuss it, less likely, or to identify what it is. Whereas in groups of say white women, they're more likely to talk to a colleague that says, you know, this is a bit strange, or find communities to talk about it. So it impacts each of us in similar ways, but how we deal with it can be different. So
just for the sake of the audience that might not know what imposter syndrome means.
Oh yes, of course.
Would you mind just explaining briefly what your definition of it is?
Yeah, see, that's so easy of not being inclusive. It's so easy to do that, because I would normally what imposter syndrome is. So imposter syndrome is where you feel like a fake or a fraud in terms of it's usually in your professional life, where you feel as though you're not good enough, you're not intelligent enough, you're not smart enough. So therefore you don't have the right to be there. But it really impacts your confidence and your the way you internalize your abilities and all your success. So that's what imposter syndrome is. And I remember my partner saying to me, "What is that awful term, imposter syndrome?" When I explained to him what it was, he said, "Oh, I've definitely experienced that." And we had a big discussion about it, about how it impacted him. So I know it affects men as well, but we just deal with it differently. So yeah, that's a good question about what is imposter syndrome.
I think following on from that as well, you know, we talked about the ethnic minority groups and so on. I know you do a lot of work around that, inclusion and diversity. What advice would you give young women or men, especially from the BAME community, given your life experiences, and what kind of great advice would you have for them, especially when you think about them navigating through their careers and how to succeed in industry sometimes that are very exclusive. I don't want to say exclusive, but industries perhaps that are harder to navigate through as a person of color or as a woman?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So given my own background as well, this is quite important. So one thing is that society sometimes dictates what you think you can be, and that can play a big part in those who maybe are disadvantaged. I'm not saying all BAME groups are disadvantaged, but they're more likely to be. So you might be already thinking, I'm not going to try, I'm not going to achieve that, or you know, my career teachers tells me don't even bother because you're not going to amount to that. You can't be a lawyer, or you can't be a doctor, or you can't be in tech. So as much as it can be hard, don't listen to what is going on around you. Don't listen to what societal norms demand of you or ask of you or tell you what you can or cannot become. So one of the things that I've always done is, I come from a disadvantaged background, but I've never, ever, ever felt disadvantaged. I've never, ever felt that I was not able or capable to go out and achieve what I wanted to do. I didn't have money, I didn't have finance, but I figured out what I could do because I had determination. So in the absence of any role models around you, please go out and find some. Please go out and find role models. Look at who's around you. Look at who is influencing you. Look at what you would like to dream to become, and look towards where you can find support or guidance to do that. You know, there's lots of mentorships, lots of groups, lots of communities that are giving advice, giving free advice, giving support. But if you believe that you're not entitled to it, then you're going to not look for it. So please look for it and just take one small step of where you can go to get that support to be something different, or to be what you want to be. Would be my most practical advice. Is just look at the groups. There's lots of quick Google search will look at communities in your area, communities online, that you'll go and you can listen to inspiring stories, motivational stories, people who have achieved things, people who have come from nothing. So just please don't listen to what's going on around you, and find something, some way to step forward out of wherever you are and into something different.
I think that's really amazing advice. And thank you for that, Rosemary, because I think a lot of the times society will actually hinder you by the you can and cannots and the shoulds and shouldn'ts and so on. And blocking that out is so important. And just as you said, for yourself as well, you had the determination and grit, and not giving up, and just not accepting that to be pigeonholed into a certain pigeonhole because of your background, whatever that background is.
Yeah, and that's really important as well.
I mean, it requires a lot of courage. Everything you said requires a lot of courage, and it sometimes when we are very deep down in a hole and we think we are alone, and nobody else is going through what we're going through, or we're suffering, etc., that requires an effort to get out there and share and find the right people, etc. But your story is inspiring in the way that it is possible. You can find, the people that will help you, and look for them and try, and and it really requires that kind of courage, and it's contagious, and it becomes more and more courageous.
Contagious. I like that, because in the darkness, when we're feeling low and despondent, that's the time that we do need something to pull us out of it. But that's not the time when we look for it, because we feel dejected, we feel low, we don't feel capable. But that's the time when it's important to have that kind of circle around you, that foundation already, that will help you identify that you need some help, you need some support, come and talk to me. So if you build that up, so that when you start feeling low, that you can call on people, that's really important. And then it becomes contagious. I like that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rosemarie. That was an awesome conversation. And could you tell our guests how they can connect with you so that they can continue the conversations with you if needed?
Oh, thank you very much. So my website is www.pragmaticacoaching.com, which is PRAGMATICA coaching, COACHING.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Rosemarie Wilson, ROSEMARIE Wilson. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter, Pragmatica Coach and Pragmatica Coaching.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
today. Yes, we truly enjoyed it. So that takes me to concluding this fantastic conversation and thanking everybody for listening. Don't forget to connect and follow Rosemarie, and make sure you check also on our website the other fantastic interviews we have, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you again, Rosemarie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.